Excellent. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for that gathering music, Jan. Welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church, where we welcome everyone, no matter what path you took to get here, no matter how you are here. If you are here in person today, if you are here watching virtually today, or if you are here watching in the future, you are a part of this community. My name is Ryan Moyers. My pronouns are he, him, and his. It is my pleasure to be here today as the worship associate. We have quite a few announcements today. I'll go through these, go through them a bit by bit. So a reminder of events coming up in the next few months. In 2 weeks for August, we have on August 9th the cluster picnic, which is all of our local UU churches, groups getting together for a picnic. That is the 9th from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Cove at Concord Park. So, please come. It is a potluck style event as well.
There's registration.
There's registration online, I believe.
Online.
Yeah. There's online registration for that, and we hope to see as many of you there as are able. In September, we have our annual Spirit Quest from Friday, September 18th to Sunday, September 20th, and is that at Elkmont? It's still, yes, it's Elkmont, like it would normally be. And then we have the All-Church Retreat coming up in October. The All-Church Retreat is at Rock Island State Park from Friday, October 23rd to Sunday, October 25th. And then for more immediate announcements, we have been giving reminders of the sign-up forms for things you can volunteer for in helping the Caring Connections Committee, and things that you think are things the committee needs to take a look at. We are going to compile all the responses we've received on the 31st of this month, so this coming Friday. And so if you haven't filled one out, but you would like to, please fill one out online or in person. I believe they are still in the back as a physical form. And you can find them online in the newsletter. We will not stop accepting them after the 31st, so if 31st is passed and then you realize, oh no, I wanted to say this, please feel free to fill it out again. We're going to keep receiving them as long as people have stuff to say on them. And then the very... let's see. Oh, and today we are having a reminder, Compassionate Communications is meeting at 12:30 today if you are part of that group. And even if you have not come to a single meeting yet, it is open to all who would like to attend. And then after that at 2 p.m., we are having our Earth Church meeting as it is the fourth Sunday of the month. And then Reverend Carol has a few more announcements.
Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see you all here today. It's great to be able to gather with people who hold at the center, holding the good, holding care, holding connection as our highest values. I am Reverend Carol Bodeau. I am privileged to serve here as minister, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. So in a moment, I'm going to invite our bowl to sing. And as our bowl sings this morning, I'm going to invite us to hold in mind those people who are not here with us physically in person, but who we're thinking about. Our service today is going to be about communication. It's going to be about how we talk to each other. And at the core of that is really connection. How do we keep and maintain connections even in the face of difficulty and conflict? So just an additional announcement. In the back of the room, you will find some cards on the back table by the donation boxes. The Caring Committee has set out a few cards for us. And even if you've never met these people, I would really invite you and encourage you to sign these cards. They're for people that are Westsiders that we just don't see very much. One that we do see very much who's having a crisis. So we have a card for Bob Valaga. Those of you who've been here for a while remember Bob. Bob's wife Lori passed a few months ago, and Bob doesn't get out much, but he very much is still connected to Westside. So please, there's a card for Bob. There's a card for Nancy and Larry Legao, who haven't been here physically for a number of years, but we still think about them, and we still want them to know that we are thinking about them. And also for Marcine Ziegler, who's 101 right now. She's I don't know that exactly when her birthday is, but she's 101 this year. So signing cards for those three would be great, so that we can just let them know we're thinking about them. And I'm going to ask Ryan to light this back candle. Barry Schumpert, many of you know Barry. Barry's husband, Pete, had a stroke about a week ago and has become non-responsive and is going into hospice. And we aren't sure whether that's going to last a few days or a few weeks. We're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. But the caring team is making a point of staying in touch with Barry, and I am. And Barry just asked that we keep him and Pete in our thoughts and in our care in this time of transition for them. So as I invite our bowl to sing, I'd like to invite us to hold in our minds and hearts those people whom we love and care about, who might not be physically present, but who could still really use that feeling of connection and concern that we bring together.
Today's chalice lighting comes from the UUA Worship Web, and it is by Craig Rowland. It is titled, "Let Us Dare." In an age where words are easy to generate and harder to mean, we pause to light this flame, not to perfect our message, but to offer something true. We light this chalice for the quiet courage it takes to speak plainly of what moves us, for the voices inside us that say, "I have measured out my life with coffee spoons, but you have shown up all the same, hopeful, haunted, and human." For every trembling invitation, every imperfect email that carries a piece of someone's heart, we give thanks. May this light remind us, connection begins not with the flawless gesture, but with the honest one. And even the smallest act of bravery can be the start of a shared path. Every week, we light candles for concern and joy, one for something that is bad in the world, and one for something that brings us joy. Our concern, our candle of concern today is we would like to remember and keep in our thoughts the victims of the vehicle attack at the Berlin Pride event just either yesterday or last night, where there have been, as of right now, over 20 injuries and one person has lost their life. We would like to keep the people there in our thoughts and the wider community in that area. Our joy today is we hear a lot about things going wrong with the environment. There are wildfires in multiple countries right now. There are severe droughts. But our joy today is, after decades of drought in the African Sahel, there has been a marked increase in water in aquifers in that region. So that is a joy for today.
It's a world where there's a lot to process right now. It's a lot to hold. So this morning, Jan is going to share with us just some time of sound. And I invite you to use this time to breathe deeply, for starters. Breathe deeply, because we spend a lot of our time not breathing very deeply, right? We hold our breath a lot. So this is a chance to breathe deeply and a chance to allow yourself to settle into this moment right here, right now, and allow these sounds to bring you whatever healing or comfort or peace or sense of harmony you need right now. So sit for just a moment and ask yourself, how did that make me feel? Did it impact your body at all? The thoughts or the pace of the thoughts moving in your mind? Your emotions, maybe? Just notice if that changed you in any way, even a subtle way. We know scientifically now that sound has an incredible impact on our physiology. So did anybody know, I thought this was fascinating when I learned it, that the sound of a cat's purr, that cats actually purr at a frequency that knits bone? Literally, the frequency they purr at will actually make your bones heal faster if they're broken. I found that really interesting because I discovered that about the same time that I actually broke a toe, and without knowing that, my cat decided to come lay on my foot and purr loudly. We know that, professional athletes now use sound to repair muscles and ligaments that are damaged. They use sonographic healing. Sound is now considered a completely valid way to address physiological distress. Last night, Tracy and I watched a new, I don't know how new it is, it's a relatively new Netflix series on sound that's hosted by David Attenborough, the great British, nature voice, the voice of British nature shows. And what the show was about is about how they now have cameras that can measure sound and translate it into visual imagery. So now we can actually see, using lights, the cameras interpret sounds that are traveling across the ocean floor or along branches, sound in ranges we cannot hear necessarily, traveling along branches, and the incredible network of the ways that the natural world communicates using sound. So sounds have the ability, in fact, the purpose of altering our state of mind, our attention, our emotions, and our basic physiology. So I was thinking about this the other day, and I kept hearing the phrase that some of us, maybe older people, have heard more than maybe younger people. Music has charms to soothe the savage breast. I see some of you mouthing it. Some of you have heard it. How many of you are familiar with that? Yeah. So there's this famous phrase, music has charms to soothe the savage breast, right? So I thought, well, okay, I got to know where that's from. Because it's wisdom, right? It's wisdom that music has the ability to do something to us, right? So that phrase actually comes from a play called The Mourning, not mourning as in wake up in the early part of the day, but mourning as in grieving, The Mourning Bride, which was a play, a satirical, sort of tragical, comical, weird play written in 1697 by a guy named William Congreve. So here's the two lines. Music has charms to soothe a savage breast, to soften rocks, or bend a knotted oak. Which is interesting, right? The idea here is that music or sound has the ability to shift and transform even the most unmovable of states. Now, Congreve probably borrowed that and adapted those lines from an earlier piece of writing, which was written by the Latin poet, the Roman epic poet Lucan. He wrote this extremely gory and kind of unpleasant epic poem called Pharsalia. And Pharsalia is episodes from Roman civil wars. So I don't encourage it as light reading, okay? It's really kind of intense. It's fairly gory. It was translated into English 70 years before Congreve wrote those lines. Here's the original 2 lines from that. The charming voice and matchless music moved the savage beasts, the stones, and the senseless trees. So I tried pretty hard to find where that was located in Pharsalia to figure out whose charming voice, like what the charming voice was. I failed because it's an epic piece of literature and it's ginormous. But it had me thinking about this, how sounds, whether they come from musical instruments or nature or our own voices, because of course the human voice is the single most common way we interact with sound every day, how that really has the power to change us for good or for ill. The sounds we listen to every day shape our moods, our responses or reactions, and they influence our well-being, even if we're unconscious of that fact. So that's it's nowhere more true than how we use our voices, right? It's a tool we use and experience having used towards us many, many, many times a day. Like even right now, right? How much does it impact you? How quickly I say my words, or how slowly I say my words, or how the pitch of my voice is, or whether I talk like this, or whether I talk like this, right? Anyone who's got any theater experience knows that the way we use our voices profoundly impacts our listeners. So here's the question I was asking myself while I was writing about today's topic. How often do we use our voices with the intention of creating healing? Now, Jan uses a much larger collection of instruments regularly to create a healing sound bath in this room, where people come and lay on the floor and sit in chairs simply to have the physiological and emotional experience of sound restoring balance and harmony. So how often do we choose to use our most powerful instrument, our voices, with the intention of healing, sending out sound that is restorative, that enhances well-being? How often do we consciously choose to speak in ways that are designed to calm our listeners' nervous systems, to elevate their state of being to its highest potential? It seems to me, and you've heard me say this before, I was an English teacher for 15 years. We are trained to use our voices and our words with other intentions. We are trained to convince, to persuade, to prove our point, to be heard, to judge. We call it analysis a lot of times, but really it's judgment, shaming and blaming, even mocking. These are some of the more common ways we're told we should use our voices. We are trained by our society that the best way to use words is, frankly, and I'm going to use 2 words that you use cringe at, so I'm going to say them. I want you to think about how this is true for us. We use our words to convert and to condemn. We don't like to think of ourselves that way, but in fact, that is the dominant cultural mode for how we're supposed to use words: to convert, to convince, or condemn, to judge. Now, as Ryan mentioned, we're having compassionate communication this afternoon, and we've been doing this for a while now, and this is the 3rd round or so of doing it here at Westside over the time I've been here over the last 11 years. And the primary task of that work of learning nonviolent or compassionate communication is to first identify how we are doing those things, using our words to convert or condemn. The purpose is first to explore our own patterns of communication and thinking, to see the ways that we are judging and blaming and shaming, not just others, but ourselves. And the purpose of the method is to ask us to shift that intention to something different, to making connections. The method asks us to begin to use language in ways that strengthens our connections with one another, not through establishing hierarchies of power or rightness, but through building common human connection. So Ryan helps lead that, and he's going to share a little bit about how that method has impacted him. Show them the book with all the markers.
Yeah. So Carol gave me this book sometime last year, and I don't remember what the context of the rest of the discussion was, but she handed it to me and said, "You need to read this," and I was like, okay. I have since read it through multiple times. There's a rainbow of tabs in this book. Reading it, it changed a lot of things for me and how I think about things. As Carol just mentioned, it's removing blame and shame, not only externally, but internally. The method, it gives you kind of a template, but acknowledges you don't need to use this template in every situation. It won't work in every situation, but it's about the work within yourself and with others. And it's got a lot of things that, like, for a while as I was reading it, I was like, this makes no dang sense. What is it telling me to do? I can't do that. But as I started to internalize the process, it changed how I view things, both from interactions with people, the way I talk to myself. I am way less cruel to myself. Like, I don't mess up something and then spend a few days going, man, I'm stupid. Perhaps one of the things in it that was the hardest to wrap my head around, that I understand, but I still have to remind myself of it every day, is you are not responsible for other people's feelings, and nobody else is the cause of yours either. And that's, sometimes you have a hard conversation with someone, and they say something, and you're like, that made me mad. You have to frame it not as they made you mad. There were things you have to look internally, what needs weren't being met, what feeling that evoked out of you. They did not cause it. And that still sometimes I'm like, no, they made me mad. It is hard to undo that, because one of the first things it wants you to learn is observe without judging. An observation is, you don't attach judgment to someone's actions. You don't say they are cruel or something or anything. You do not make judgments, only observations. And it has been a lot of work because, again, as Carol said, we have probably all of us in some way grown up in a culture of passing judgment on someone for any reason, even if we think we're doing the right kind of judgment. Shame is a powerful controller in a lot of aspects of how our society works right now. They want you, the ambiguous they, people want to use shame to control other people, or if you are feeling constant shame about yourself, you are easier to convince about certain things. It has transformed the way I look at all of my relationships professionally in the workplace, my relationships with people here, my relationships with friends I've had for a decade plus, longer, whatever, my relationship with my spouse, Ash. It has really changed how I look at every interaction, and I'm able to approach them not only with the intent to truly come into that conversation wanting to be kind and exude that kindness, but also I do not encounter difficult conversations in a way where I am immediately on the defensive. I go in expecting to get into a big argument about it. It doesn't mean that every conversation goes well. It doesn't mean that every conversation is left with a great resolution being made, but I have, in this time, really ended up being more conscientious and kinder, both inwardly and outwardly. And while the method is not perfect for literally every situation, and there are valid critiques of it, I believe the inner work that is done with it is valuable for any person to really take at least one look at.
Thanks. So, one of the things Ryan's story demonstrates is that it's not a fast method to internalize. This isn't a quick fix. This is not a just find these 3 magic words and everything will be great. This is using the power of our voices to transform the way we engage as human beings. So let's do a quick review of the basic model. And I'm going to remind you that a few months ago, the board actually, when we discussed this, the board actually said, Carol, we all need to learn this. Please make a point of let's teach it, let's talk about it in worship, let's do workshops on it. We want everybody to start practicing this. That's how important that the institution believes it is. So let's review the basic model really quickly. The first step in the model is we begin by naming very clearly an action or word or event that triggered an emotion in us. Okay? Now, as Ryan just said, you don't attach any judgment to that. It's not when you're cruel. It's when you use that word, or when you raise your voice in that way, or when you slam the door. I'm observing the specific action without passing judgment or making an assessment of the motivations behind the action. Okay, if we just stopped there and I said, y'all go practice that for a week, I think that would be a challenge. That's plenty. That's a challenge, right? That's the first step. Second, when an action occurs that triggers us, we have to identify how we feel. Now, this is tricky. How many of us have ever felt abandoned or rejected or shunned or blamed? Okay, no, not a single one of those is an emotion. Those are judgments. We are assessing the other person's motivation. You are abandoning me. You are rejecting me. Those are really easy for someone to become defensive about. They can be like, no, I did not. That's not what I was doing. Right? So the minute we make an assessment of their motivations, we've taken it out of our own control. So in the practice groups, when someone says, I felt abandoned, I say, what does abandoned feel like? What does rejected feel like? There are some basic core emotions that we can start with, and then there are nuances of these, but the basic feelings are angry, scared, confused, upset, happy, curious, right? These are the basics. Scared. So, how does rejected feel? How does abandoned feel? What is the actual emotional state you are having, right? Okay, so those two things alone, can you just for a second imagine how if we all just changed those two basic patterns, how much that would change us? If we just never again made a judgment about the person's action or made a judgment about their motivations and actually just said, I am scared. Right now I'm scared. Right now I'm really upset. I'm really worried. I'm really lonely. I'm really angry. We are trained to shortcut over that stuff because it's too uncomfortable. It is very uncomfortable to stand in a place that says, okay, I'm really triggered. I feel terror right now. I'm super scared and I don't know what to do about it. We're trained to hop right over that to, so you better do something different. You caused it and you better fix it, so stop doing that thing. Does that make sense? Right? That is how we're trained to interact emotionally with other human beings. But most of us know that when you do that, there's a really, really good chance that the other person is going to react how? They're going to be defensive. They're going to say, "Rah, rah," they're going to, right? Every action generates an equal and opposite reaction. We were talking about this recently with reactions versus responses. So this method is designed to stop the reactivity and allow us to take a breath and respond from our truth. So the third step, once we've said, okay, they slammed the door again, I'm triggered again, I feel, what do I feel? Probably 5 different things. Upset, scared, worried that it's never going to be calm, angry that they didn't hear me when I talked about this before, right? The third step is saying, so what do I need? What is my need, or the thing that's really important to me that's causing me to feel upset right now? Right? I need respect. I need peace. I need compassion. I really value honest communication. I really want to be able to say what's important to me and be heard. All these kinds. Now, those kinds of things, when you're feeling triggered, it's hard to say those things. So the fourth step is to make a request. And that part, we haven't even gotten to that really in the class yet that we're working on, because all this other stuff takes so much to be able to figure out what you actually want to ask for. We are trained to ask for the other person to stop doing the thing that makes us upset. So Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication model rests on making very different requests of our communication and of one another. It rests on a few primary assumptions, which Ryan was talking about. The steps reveal a few core assumptions that are transformative and different about how we use our voices. The first core assumption is that communication goes badly awry when it involves judgment. Now, I know that in this room, in this moment, some of you are thinking, but wait! Isn't judgment essential and important and exactly what we need to be communicating about? Don't we need to be judging things? So what I always say at that point of a conversation is there's a difference between discernment and judgment. Discernment is clarity about what's happening, which may involve some clarity about what is happening for the other person. Judgment is making a value judgment and extrapolating from our discernment further than just the simple discernment. So the answer in the model is no, judgment is not helpful. It is our brain's way of trying to figure out who or what needs to change so we can feel better quickly. But the first thing that we need to do, and this is another core assumption, is we need to take responsibility for our feelings. So, back at what Ryan said, I can't make you feel anything. You can't make me feel anything. This is really tricky. This is really tricky, folks. Because I know some of you, it's wonderful. Someone in our first class looked at me, or maybe our second class looked at me and said very clearly, you don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, that's a judgment. How do you feel? And that is really the core of the method. Notice that in that situation, if Ryan walked up to me and said, you don't know what you're talking about, what's my first reaction probably going to be internally? Upset. I was upset. I wasn't thrilled. I had a feeling. But I knew that feeling was my choice. It was mine to work with. It triggered something in me, and I then had a choice. I could say, okay, when I hear you say that, I feel a little upset, but I really value the communication and the connection, so I'm curious. Could you tell me more? Right? So imagine someone comes up to you and says, you make me so mad. Well, first, how do you feel when someone says, you make me so mad? Do you want to own that? We are going to have one of two responses to that. One response is going to be, I did not, it's not my fault, right? Or, how can I make it better? I'm so sorry, you're right. I always do the wrong thing. These are very common responses. This method's goal is to eliminate all of that. What therapists might call a certain kind of enmeshment, right? Where you're having a feeling and it's my responsibility, and I'm having a feeling and it's your responsibility. So the second core assumption, the first core assumption is judgment is not helpful. And the second core assumption is we are all responsible for whatever we're feeling. This does not mean you shouldn't have the feeling. You get to be angry. You get to be confused. You get to be sad. You get to be lonely. You get to have the extremes of those emotions. You just know that you are the only one that can actually change that emotion in yourself. The only person who can control what's happening inside you is you. So the first step in the model is to identify what's happening without judging it, and to be honest about what we're feeling. Isn't the whole point of a lot of what we do with our language to avoid vulnerability? Like, don't we use language as a shield or a weapon a lot of the time? That's what we do. We're trained to use the sounds of our voices as weapons and shields. Not. Even sometimes when we think we're using our voices to help and heal, that's actually a way of trying to assert control. If I can just make this person feel better, they'll stop hurting me. If I can just make this person less upset, if I can just use my voice to calm the situation enough, then things will be safer. Now, those are very normal responses. This model is based on the assumption that us repeatedly doing that is making a mess. It's making a mess out there. So, the third core assumption of this model is that vulnerability is a good thing. Now, obviously, there are situations, as Ryan said, where this isn't the appropriate model. I remember the first time I talked about this many, many years ago, and one of the members of the congregation came up to me and said, if someone is threatening me with a weapon, I'm not going to say, when you hold that weapon, it makes me feel this way. Right? Obviously. And if your boss says, you have to do this thing, you have to do this thing, you don't say, you know, when you ask me to do that thing, I feel sad. Right? Because there are different kinds of communication. There are different moments of communication in our lives. But in the moments where what we really want and what's really important is connection, building bridges, building relationship, building community. How many of us know that trying to convince and persuade someone who's got a very different perspective, and we love them, and we care about them, and we want them to connect with us, but we are battering them over the head with our words to try to convince them to change their mind. How well does that go? It doesn't go well. It's not an effective method. This method is an alternative. So, what would it be like for you? How does that, first, how do you feel about it when I say, judgment's not helpful most of the time? I'm guessing you have some judgments about that idea. I certainly did. Ryan certainly did. We've talked about it in our group, right? It's really tricky. And the second assumption, how does it make you feel when I say no one's responsible for your feelings? And you're not responsible for anyone else's. So today in our group, today's topic, for those of you who come to Compassionate Communication, our topic today is going to be self-differentiation. So anybody just sit with that for a second. What does it mean to be self-differentiated? And I was talking with Tracy about this last night, and he said, what's that even mean? I said, it means staying in relationship while letting the other person be 100% responsible for themselves. Think about that. Staying in relationship while each person is 100% responsible for themselves. That's not how we are taught to think about relationship. We're mostly taught to think about relationship in terms that are, I take care of you, you take care of me, we're responsible for each other. But this is a very different model. This is a very different kind of communication. It has a different purpose because it's not about getting the other person to do what makes you comfortable. It's about taking responsibility for our own discomfort, understanding our own discomfort, and having space to understand the other person's discomfort. Because every single thing that is happening in our world that we don't like is happening because somebody is uncomfortable. Somebody is uncomfortable, and they don't know any other way to deal with their discomfort besides acting out in ways that we might see or feel or experience as destructive, which is a judgment. All right? The discomfort is the core of the practice. That makes sense? You agree with that, Ryan? The discomfort is the core of the practice. Getting comfortable with meeting our own discomfort and being in the room when somebody else is uncomfortable and saying it, and not losing our cheese when someone's uncomfortable in front of us. And being able to say, I see that you are really uncomfortable. Me too. What's that about for you? The only way to avoid triggering defensiveness may be to allow ourselves to be fully vulnerable and authentic. And of course, that is not appropriate for every conversation. And yet, it's probably more appropriate more of the time than we can possibly imagine. It's probably more appropriate most of the time than we might be comfortable with. Because it requires us first to be truly honest with ourselves. What triggers us? Why does it trigger us? What feelings have I been pushing down that this reminds me of? So ministers have this thing that we say about particularly moments of loss or grief in a community. So say a memorial, a celebration of life, or a memorial for someone who's passed. We will say that every loss triggers every other loss that you have not yet resolved. Anybody ever cried at a television commercial or a TV show for fictional people that don't exist, that you've never met? Or gotten all worked up about a movie where somebody's fighting somebody and winning? What's that about? That's about us having feelings inside of ourselves that we are hanging on to that we have not yet moved through. And so there are opportunities for us to experience those feelings that sometimes take us by surprise. I often will say when people are, there's ads, especially around Halloween time, for the scary movies, the horrible, I'm sorry, I have some judgment around it, right? But the gory, terrifying, all that stuff, and I'm like, why would you go to, why? What the heck? What's the appeal of that? And one of the psychologically true answers is that we don't know how to face our own fears. So sitting through that kind of movie gives us the feeling, the artificial temporary feeling that we can handle danger, that we can face our fears, without actually acknowledging what our actual deepest fears are within ourselves. We get to kind of pretend we've gone through our fear without actually facing our fear. So the premise here is that your feelings are already inside you. The tears were already inside you. The grief was already inside you. The anger was already inside you. The fear was already inside you. And this triggered it. So one of the hardest things about this practice is that now Ryan says something to me like, "You are an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about." And now I don't just have to deal with the feeling of Ryan thinking about that about me. I've got to deal with all of the backlog of every teacher, of every other congregant, of every mentor, of every family member, of every person all the way through my entire life who has said, "You're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about." Right? That's a lot. It's a lot. So it's not a fast process, but boy, is it life-changing. Because now someone can say to me, "You don't know what you're talking about." I've done it enough that I can say, "Whew, zing, there's that zinger. Tell me more about that." I can truly and sincerely be non-reactive and just curious. Like, one of the things that I will often say that makes people a little angry is I will say, "That's juicy," or "That's fascinating. Huh, I'm curious about that." And often it's when somebody wants me to be reactive. How many times do we use our words or experience someone using our words at us where the goal is to make us reactive or to make them react? Have you never used your words to try to poke somebody, to provoke them? Well, what I've learned with this method that's super useful is it stops working on me. They can use the words, and I'll just say, "Huh, fascinating." And it doesn't work. So, it's not a small commitment to really commit to this model, commit to this practice, and there are limitations and contexts and all sorts of things. But the work of compassionate communication, training ourselves in this kind of practice, and we do the practice sort of as a fake it till you make it model, right? So when we practice it, we have to try it out. We find out how hard it is and what we like and what we don't like. It slowly but surely changes the way we relate to ourselves and make connections with others. It changes the fundamental goals of our relationships. It's not what we were taught to do when we communicate. But these strategies like music may, and I would say they do because I've seen it happen, have the power to transform situations and relationships that truly seem immutable, to soothe the savage energies within us and within each other, to soften the hardest hearts, the stones, to change the way people engage. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I would really encourage you to join us. Compassionate communication is something we're going to continue to do indefinitely. We may stop doing it twice a month and may shift to once a month at the end of the summer just because of other things we need to do. But it's not going to go away, and you're going to hear about it a lot, and we're going to do some workshops, and we're going to continue to find ways to encourage all of us to do it. You can also, if you're interested and you don't want to do it here, the book, Ryan can hold up the book for us again. There are many books. There are workbooks. There are exercise books. There are online practice groups. There are in-person practice groups. It's all over the world. So if you're curious about it, there are all kinds of ways you can learn about it. We are committed here to learning this kind of way of relating to one another because it allows us to detach from the mechanisms of polarization and blaming and shaming and divisiveness that are currently destroying our cultural fabric. It's a very direct way that we as individuals can actively choose to opt out of the models of ways of interacting that are destroying our culture. So I would encourage you to check it out if you're at all curious. Let us together learn to use our language, our words, our voices, the sounds we create to be agents of unity, true curiosity, truly honoring the inherent worth and dignity of, yes, every single person. And no matter what is happening, to have the capacity to be loving and kind and respectful, to bring the things that we want to see more of in the world. So may it be so. So take a deep breath. That's a deep and personal way of literally transforming our corner of the universe. There are other very physical actions we take here at Westside to be agents of care in the world. Our justice and generosity programs and partnerships allow us to reach out and make connections in the community. Our current partner is Keep the Tennessee River Beautiful. It's an ecological project, which they've been working on cleaning up the Tennessee River for a number of years, and last summer they pulled their 1 millionth tire out of the Tennessee River. And this is not just in our area, it's the whole length of the Tennessee River. So that is good work. You can contribute to that by using our QR code. We have a baseline donation that the board has already committed to make, as we do with all our partners. You can also use the QR code or the box in the back of the room to make a separate donation to them. And you can always contribute directly to Westside because there are many things we do here. So just contributing to the functioning of this organization helps us do good work in the world. And I just want to say a special thank you this morning to Lily in the back, who is our newest tech person running our live stream for us. So big thanks to Lily. Big thanks to Lily. Awesome. So as we close our service, we have the tradition of standing together and boldly and audaciously either holding your own hand, which is the equivalent of compassionate communication with yourself, boldly holding your own hand, or choosing to hold the hand of your neighbor. May we be courageous by being vulnerable. May we be bold and daring by being curious. And may we truly live the values we espouse, which are centered in love, not fear. Go into this day and this week and this hurting world to be the agents of connection, care, and transformation that you are, every single one of you, capable of being. May it be so. Go in peace and go in passion.